Gone from carbon tax Carney to conflict of interest Carney, and now coincidence Carney. Will the Prime Minister cut loose carbon tax Carney?
Well, here we are back with another Wednesday session. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today we've got House of Commons session Wednesday, which is when Justin Trudeau is supposed to show up for work. It doesn't mean he'll stay in the House of Commons throughout the entire session. He often gets diaper rash, he poopy pants his way out the door, but he is here, and him and Pierre really tee off. It's clear he has a new tactic that they've come up with. I don't know if they just dug this out of their butt in the last 24 hours after they lost the by-election in Montreal, but you'll notice Justin Trudeau keeps trying to tell people how Pierre Poilievre is feeling. He's scared, he's this and that, he's worried. Let's jump into this.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The NDP leader sold out Canadians to sign onto a costly coalition that doubled the debt, doubled the housing costs, sent 2 million people to food banks and 1,800 tent encampments. He voted 24 times for the carbon tax. And since he did his dramatic video, he's refused to answer 40 times whether he'd vote non-confidence. Now that he knows that the Bloc is going to keep the Liberals in power, he'll stand up and claim that he's voting against. Mr. Speaker, why won't the NDP stand up when it counts so that we can end this costly coalition and elect a common sense government?
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see that the Leader of the Opposition enjoys his political games, enjoys chasing after his own political interests, and has not a second to care for Canadians' interests. He's actually in a bad mood because inflation has come down for Canadians. He doesn't care about their interests. That's why we're going to continue to deliver for Canadians. We're going to continue to step up with investments that are going to support Canadians, fight climate change, and build a brighter future for everyone.
Poilievre is dominating in the polls, yet Trudeau keeps saying he's in a bad mood, this and that. Just watch for it.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this costly NDP carbon tax coalition, what's happened? What's up? Taxes up, costs up, crimes up, time's up. What Canadians need is hope. By choosing a common sense government that axes taxes, builds homes, fixes the budget, and stops the crime so they can earn powerful paychecks and pensions that buy affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods protected by a strong military. Why can't we bring it home now?
Mr. Speaker, that little performance shows just how much the Leader of the Opposition loves his slogans, but actually doesn't put forward any.
I'm going to ask, as I'd asked a previous member before, to please not take the floor unless they're recognized. I'm going to ask all members, please, to allow the member to. I'll ask Prime Minister, Right Honourable Prime Minister, to start from the top.
Boy, Mr. Speaker, point out the performance of the Leader of the Opposition,
This
and his
guy.
colleagues get all upset because they know that he doesn't actually care about Canadians. He doesn't care about the programs we're delivering. He doesn't care about stepping up to support Canadians. He's actually in a bad mood because inflation has come down to 2%, Mr. Speaker, and it ruins his little just inflation slogan. He is so upset because he's cared about his own interests and not the interests of Canadians. We're going to stay focused on the things that matter to people while he spins little rhymes and tosses out his slogans. We'll take this seriously like we always have.
Like we always have. This guy, he should really audition for some sort of comedy gig after he gets tossed out.
If anyone had any doubt, it's definitely Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the just inflation tagline works now better than ever. He can try to call himself Rocky Balboa and play fight songs to aggrandize himself as the star. But the people lined up at food banks, 2 million of them every month, know better. The people who are living in the 1,800 Ontario tent encampments know better. The 35 homeless encampments in Halifax, the people there know better. They know that we need to fire this costly carbon tax coalition so we can elect a common sense government that will bring it home for them.
Speaker, he sure loves to declaim about vulnerable people and perform his empathetic supposed concern. But the reality is he is using vulnerable people for his own political gains.
Anytime you hear Trudeau blaming someone else for something, he is projecting himself. Trudeau knows full well that he's been using people for his own gain.
If he actually cared about people, he wouldn't have voted against dental care for 700,000 seniors. He wouldn't have voted against a school food policy that's helping families with $800 worth of groceries a year. He's not making the investments in Canadians. He wants to cut programs, make Canadians suffer, so he can sit in the big chair.
This guy's such a clown.
April 30th, 2014. Life in Canada, home of the world's most affluent middle class, the New York Times. Yet, today, almost a decade after that NDP Liberal Prime Minister has been in what he calls the big chair, Canada's GDP per capita is actually down, while the American one is up 19%. His carbon taxes are strangling growth. How could the solution possibly be to quadruple the tax to 61 cents a litre and send more jobs and businesses south?
Right, Honourable.
It's almost like there's some sort of other incentive that isn't benefiting Canadians. I wonder who it benefits.
How many wildfires, hurricanes, droughts are going to go after Canadians' lives and livelihoods before he understands you can't have a plan for the economy unless you have a plan for the environment?
They're still sticking to that after their caucus, huh? 8 out of 10, all the way in with the climate change thing after they've already proven it's destroyed our country.
The opposition.
He doesn't have a plan for either, as evidenced by the fact that he came completely unglued and started spitting out personal insults and crying, liar, 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 on a radio station the other day when he learned that I had pointed to his own government report, which showed that his carbon tax will blow a $25 to $30 billion hole in our GDP. This was from a report that his government tabled in the House of Commons. If, in fact, his government is lying about the true cost of the carbon tax to our economy, then what is the true cost?
He's not going to answer that.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer demonstrated that 8 out of 10 Canadian families do better with the Canada carbon rebate every 3 months than the cost of the price on pollution. And on top of that, Canadians know the price on pollution has brought down our emissions faster than any other G7 country at the same time as it is supporting Canadians in the middle class and working hard to join it.
Yet they don't track that. They've never proven that. There's no data for that. This government is unbelievable.
We're going to continue to fight climate change and invest in a strong economy for the future, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to deny climate change and cut programs and services that Canadians rely on.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you can't sit in the big chair if you can't read your own government documents. Environment and Climate Change Canada carbon pollution pricing data tabled in this House by his government said that it will cost between $25 and $30 billion in lost GDP when this tax is implemented. A further document tabled by his Environment Minister on Carbon Tax 2 says there will be another $9 billion hole for a total of between $34 and $40 billion. Now he screams that this is all lies. Again, if his government documents are lying, what is the true cost of the carbon tax to our economy?
He'll never answer that question.
Speaker, every Canadian, except perhaps the Canadians in the Conservative Party of Canada, understand that the costs of inaction on climate change will be catastrophic. We are choosing to invest in a strong economy for the future. We're choosing to fight climate change and develop the solutions that the world's going to need to do that, while the Leader of the Opposition offers a do-nothing climate change plan that will cost Canadians billions.
Hear, hear.
His carbon tax has not stopped a single flood, or single fire in this country. He's not stopped any natural disasters. What he has done is driven Canadians into poverty, quadrupling the tax to 61 cents a litre will cause a nuclear winter for our economy. Something that his carbon tax coalition partners in the NDP have voted to bring about. So if he really is so confident in a 61 cent a litre tax, why doesn't he call a carbon tax election and let Canadians decide?
Liberals really don't like that term nuclear winter. They went nuclear over that last time he mentioned it.
Speaker, the problem with the Leader of the Opposition is he believes in slogans. He just doesn't believe in climate change. The fact is, our plan to fight climate change is not just putting more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians across the country,
please.
but it's bringing down emissions. We are going to continue to build a strong economy for the future because we know fighting climate change is part of it.
Trudeau, why don't you go fight climate change by yourself? Not with our money. Every time he says that 8 out of 10 crap, it's like he's denying the sky is blue. It's like, the sky is red. It's quite clear, sky's not red, buddy.
But he's not fighting climate change. He's driving production out of Canada to more polluting for foreign jurisdictions, rather than our common sense plan to greenlight green projects that produce more energy around the world that displace emissions. That's a common sense approach. And he still won't answer the question, though, on the full cost of his 2 carbon taxes. I've cited government documents tabled in this House that say that it will total between $34 and $40 billion per year in lost GDP and jobs. If his government documents are wrong, then what is the true loss of GDP as a result of his 61 cent a litre carbon tax?
Just that one response alone, the LNG projects, the tidal, all that stuff, which will displace all that dirty coal you have in India and China, the 2 biggest nations on planet Earth, which I saw someone did the math on that. It would turn out we would be carbon negative 300% if we did that. Something crazy. The fact that he just loaded that response with that and then came back with the documents, and Trudeau has never got an answer. The guy can't answer a question to save his life.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about driving investment out of Canada. He must be remembering his own time as minister, because since 2016, Mr. Speaker, foreign direct investment is up 60% in this country. Last year, we were 3rd in the world after the U.S. and Brazil, which makes us #1 for foreign investment in the G20 per capita. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we are continuing to show the world that they can have confidence in Canada and in Canadians. Why doesn't he have confidence in Canadians? Why won't he invest in Canada?
You see this? They're doing this stand-up support thing. They haven't done this in a while. So they must have had a caucus meeting. Trudeau must have been, when I get going, just stand up and start barking like seals. That messaging was probably pushed along that they need to see more supportive, because it's quite clear that's what they're doing here. And maybe they're just scared because they're about to all lose their jobs. Quite literally, probably all of them, most of them. This is clearly some last-ditch effort attempt to try to rally more support.
The Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada said of Canada's investment problems, emergency break glass. Canadian workers get 55 cents of investment for every dollar American workers get, and only 65 cents for every dollar that an OECD worker gets. The gap between the Canadian and U.S. economy is now at a 100-year high after 9 years of the NDP Liberals. So one last time, his own documents show that his 61 cent a litre carbon tax will blow a $40 billion hole in our economy. If that number's not right, what is the real number?
Speaker, once again we see that the Leader of the Opposition is frustrated that international economists, climate experts, academics all back our plan to both fight climate change and grow a strong economy, while he's stuck with late-night far-right conspiracy YouTube videos. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we are delivering concretely to build a stronger future for Canadians, to fight climate change and to grow the economy, while he is hiding his head in the sand and refusing to admit even that climate change is real.
Yeah, a greater future for Canada here, right? 1,800 tent encampments in Ontario alone. Just imagine your legacies, people ending themselves and living in poverty and suffering. This guy doesn't care what he's done to the lives of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of Canadians. That's how bad of a person we've got running our country.
Listen to 2014, Canadians attracted $30 to $100 billion more of American investment than the reverse. In the last 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, there have been 450 billion more Canadian dollars invested in the U.S. than the return. That's Canadian money billing U.S. pipelines, U.S. mines, U.S. businesses paying American workers with Canadian money. That is the consequence of a high carbon tax and a high energy price that drives jobs away. When will the Prime Minister learn that his radical plan to hike the tax to 61 cents a litre will destroy our economy further?
The problem with that argument, Mr. Speaker, is that the Leader of the Opposition doesn't understand that the International Monetary Fund and others have projected Canada to have stronger growth than the United States next year, despite the fact that we have a price on pollution, or perhaps because of the fact we have a price on pollution that is drawing in investment from around the world in the growing sectors of the economy to ensure good jobs in mining, in environmental research, in various industries, because we know the future is greener.
Yeah, like all those companies pulling out their EV plants now and switching back. This guy's so arrogant.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Our per capita GDP is smaller than it was 10 years ago, perhaps the first time since the Great Depression that has happened. He's had the worst economic growth since the Depression. The OECD says that Canada will have the worst economic growth this year and for the next 3 decades. Our economy has dropped more per capita since before COVID than any other G7 country. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. This Prime Minister wants to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre, which will be an economic catastrophe for this country.
Speaker, what that little performance just showed is that the Leader of the Opposition is using his brokenest argument around Canada to explain why he would cut dental programs, cut child care, step away from any climate action, withdraw support to draw in investment. That's his excuse. The problem with that argument, however, Mr. Speaker, is Canada actually has the strongest fiscal position of any of the world's advanced economies, and our choice is putting that strong fiscal position in service of investment in Canadians, in dental, in childcare, in pharma, in...
There it is again. They're all standing up. Yeah, they're just going to keep doing it. They're trying to show solidarity. They're just a den of thieves. Bunch of liars.
There he goes again, telling Canadians they've never had it so good. It's never been so good for those 2 million people lined up at food banks. For the 1 million people every month that go to food banks in Ontario, record-smashing increases in homelessness by his own admission, after he promised a food program that hasn't delivered a single meal, despite millions spent on bureaucracy. 1 in 4 kids line up at food banks. And now, the worst. He proposes to quadruple the carbon taxes on heat, housing, fuel, and food. How much, and how much will that take from our GDP?
Mr. Speaker, the problem that he will not the problem he has is that he cannot admit that the price on pollution puts more money back in the pockets of middle-class Canadians and those working hard to join it. He continues to spew the line that Canada is broken, and whenever I point out that we have a strong fiscal balance sheet, he says, no, we need cuts. That is not the path forward for Canada, and that's the choice Canadians get to make.
Does he really think he's inspiring anyone?
Canadians who can't eat, heat, or house themselves are living in austerity now. And as to his false PMO talking point about 8 out of 10 Canadians being better off, it conveniently excludes the $25 billion per year in economic costs that his own government admits that the carbon tax imposes on Canadians. And that's why 6 in 10 Canadian families and 100% of the middle class are worse off with his carbon tax. So his documents show Canadians are worse off. If he doesn't have confidence in his own government documents, how can this House have confidence in his government?
Let alone the millions of people in Quebec and the millions in BC who don't get a rebate. How is this fair that, say for my example myself, living in BC, I have to pay higher prices in gas, home heating, food, all of it, but then I get nothing? How is that better? You can't say 8 out of 10 and then just say, well, in the provinces that we do apply the program to, but that excludes half the country.
Millions of Canadians across the country have received the Canada Carbon Rebate checks that puts more money in their pockets every 3 months
Screw this
than
guy.
it costs them on average on the price on pollution.
Mr. Speaker, under the Liberals, housing prices in Winnipeg are out of control. The average rent for a one-bedroom suite in Winnipeg increased over 22% since last year, the largest jump in the country. Corporate landlords are buying up affordable housing and jacking up rents because they know they have support of both the Liberals and the Conservatives. Well, I can tell you one thing, Mr. Speaker, they are not the answer to our housing crisis. So my question to the Prime Minister, why is he allowing corporate landlords to price people out of their homes?
The question she should be asking is, why has the Prime Minister brought in so many people to increase housing prices so much? And the reason why Winnipeg is now going up is because all the other good cities are already too expensive. First it was Vancouver, then Greater Vancouver, then it went to Ontario, Toronto, then it jumped over to Calgary and Edmonton, the rest of Ontario, Atlantic Canada. Now we're getting over to Winnipeg because Winnipeg is not the most desirable city to live in. It's cold, there's mosquitoes, there's no mountains. It's going to go city by city until every single place in Canada is unlivable.
Mr. Speaker, I very much look forward to working with the NDP Premier of Manitoba on Renters' Bill of Rights. We just presented a number of measures that will directly help renters, like ensuring that rent is counted towards calculation of credit scores.
Oh, that's garbage. That is garbage, and they know it's garbage. This just gives the government more control over the people. This guy's absolutely out to lunch.
Under 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, housing costs have doubled. Now, he said he was going to create a $4 billion fund to give to cities to speed up home building. So he gave Toronto City Hall $500 million. What did they do? Hiked building taxes by 42%. He gave Ottawa City Hall $200 million, so they could hike taxes by 11%. He gave Mississauga City Hall $113 million, so they could hike taxes by 22%. Why does he keep funding bloated local government gatekeepers that block housing rather than building the homes?
Pierre coming with the receipts.
Mr. Speaker, let us not take any lessons from that failed Harper housing minister who didn't get anything built while he was on the job. We're going to continue to do what he didn't, which is working with cities, working with provinces and territories, working with nonprofits to get homes built.
Right.
Yeah, except housing starts are down, Trudeau, and the cost of living is out of control. So blaming Harper doesn't do anything for you.
They're not being built. In fact, housing construction is down, way down. And he should take lessons from everyone because he has the worst housing inflation in Canadian history and by far the worst housing inflation in the G7 after 9 years in power. And now he's bloating up the same bureaucracies that have given us the slowest building permits in the G7. Why won't he follow my common sense plan to link federal dollars to housing completions to incentivize local governments to speed up permits, free up land, and actually cut building taxes?
That would be too smart.
The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we have been working with premiers, working with municipalities, working with nonprofits to turn the ship around that he neglected.
You did not turn the ship around. That's the point. You're a big failing loser, Trudeau. You're the biggest failure and the biggest loser in this country. That's the problem. We don't care what you're doing, this and that. You have bad results. In any other company in this country, you would have been fired 10 times over for being so bad at your job, Trudeau.
When he was so-called housing minister. The reality is we are delivering for Canadians. We have a lot more work to do, and his slogans and divisive attacks aren't going to get any homes built for anyone.
Weak response.
Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when I was housing minister, the average home price was $450,000. The rent was $950 for a one-bedroom, $1,100 for a two-bedroom. It's now doubled to over $2,000. And we built almost 200,000 homes at those rock-bottom low prices. So now, fast forward a decade, 28% of Canadians tell a RE/MAX survey they're considering leaving the country because of housing inflation doubling under this Prime Minister. So why doesn't he get his gatekeepers out of the way and follow my common sense plan to build the homes?
Mr. Speaker, like in so many of his plan consists entirely of slogans and personal attacks on me, on mayors, on Canadians who are working to get things done. I was just in Vancouver meeting with the extraordinary folks of the Vancouver Chinatown Foundation that are delivering a unit that this young woman can now live in and afford because of investments this federal government has delivered.
Oh, congratulations. One person's got a place to live now. Problem solved, right?
We're going to be there for Canadians while he's there for himself.
Yeah. That's so rich.
Children are not able to buy alcohol. They're not able to buy marijuana or cigarettes, but they can have access to crack pipes and kits to be able to do so-called safe injection. It's just wrong. These are the words of the stepfather of Brianna McDonald, the 13-year-old girl who lost her life to a drug overdose in Abbotsford after she was denied treatment but offered drug paraphernalia by the authorities. When will the Prime Minister end this radical agenda, close the drug dens, defund unsafe supply, and treat addiction to bring our loved ones home drug-free?
Mr. Speaker, tragedies like that are unthinkable, and we need to do everything we can as orders of government to bring them to an end, to protect kids, to protect communities.
This young girl's family begged hospital treatment for their vulnerable teenager. Instead, she was given drug paraphernalia. This is all part of the radical experiment that the Prime Minister and the NDP have imposed and have contributed to 47,000 drug overdose deaths, with the biggest increases in the places where this approach has been tried. Alberta has reduced overdoses by 50% with treatment. Why won't he follow the science and back the plans that work?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
For anyone puzzled by the link or the not link to federal jurisdiction in that question, that was an ad in support of John Rustad, the BC Conservative leader who's about to be in a campaign, the leader of the opposition continues to focus on ideology while we roll up our sleeves, work with partners on delivering solutions for Canadians. We need to lead with compassion and science, and that is what we will always do.
Yeah, by making all that hard candy stuff available, easily accessible. You know, a little update. There's a video that's been going around in Nanaimo Hospital, an emergency exit. You could go in and there's a vending machine. You could push the buttons and it pops the stuff out. I was going to go there and film it, but because that video blew up, now they removed that vending machine. Interesting, right? A little bit of bad PR. I guess David Eby probably called it in, told him to get that stuff out of there because it looks bad that they're giving away free hard candy paraphernalia in the vending machine. It teaches you how to use it too. That's a lot of compassion right there.
Mr. Speaker, it is federal because this federal Prime Minister has offered a criminal code and Controlled Drugs and Substances Act exemption to allow the drug dens to go ahead, and he's spent hundreds of millions of dollars on tax-funded, unsafe supply that is killing our people and addicting our kids. It's just like on car theft, where he's brought in catch and release and house arrest for career car thieves. Today, he has a chance to reverse himself and vote for Common Sense Bill C-379 to bring in mandatory jail time for career car thieves. Will he do the right thing?
That jail time, too, needs to be work time. They need to be working 8 hours a day, doing hard manual labor, whatever we don't want to pay people to do. The best would be the most expensive jobs. If it's, say, cleaning the sewers, get them down in there cleaning the sewers. They don't work, they don't get to eat. Problem solved.
The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see a return to the failed Stephen Harper tough on crime policies that don't work, Mr. Speaker. Mandatory minimums struck down by the Supreme Court don't work. What has worked, Mr. Speaker, is increasing the number of scanners after Stephen Harper's government cut them, increasing the investments in policing, in AI to process and discover which containers will have cars in them, crack down on
so full of crap.
To step up with science and solutions instead of just flailing around and using the same failed Harper playbook.
This guy's still blaming Harper.
2015, Ahmed Faoud Mustafa El-Didi appeared in an ISIS torture video dismembering a human body on a crucifix. Yet in 2018, this NDP Liberal government let him in, later giving him citizenship, only to find from French authorities that he was plotting a massive terrorist attack on people living in the Toronto area. Also, this last several weeks, we learned that another potential terrorist gained access as under a student visa to plan an attack on New York City Jews. Why won't the Prime Minister reverse the damage he's done to our borders, secure our country, and stop the terrorism?
It's almost like he wants it here.
Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition was genuinely serious in his concern for national security, he would choose to get the top-secret clearance that we have offered him instead of putting forward this little performance. We, on this side of this House, don't play politics with national security.
Yeah, right, man.
Mr. Speaker, carbon tax Carney is already getting his way. Only days after he took on the unofficial and unelected role as finance minister, we learned that the company that he chairs is now seeking $10 billion federal Canadian tax dollars, money to control Canadians' pensions. So he's gone from carbon tax Carney to conflict of interest Carney, and now coincidence Carney. Will the Prime Minister cut loose carbon tax Carney and call a carbon tax election so Canadians can choose their future?
Hard pivot away from his security clearance, Mr. Speaker. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, he is jealous that top-notch economists and world-renowned experts back our plan to fight climate change and grow the economy, but he's stuck with late-night far-right conspiracy videos on YouTube.
Just such a smug, arrogant prick. Every single day, it's like he just his ego grows in size every day.
Mr. Speaker,
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
carbon tax Carney has nothing to hide. Then he would simply sign up and have an ethics clearance and an ethics committee review. We've tried to bring him to the ethics committee, mais le Bloc québécois a travaillé avec les libéraux pour
The Bloc Québécois worked with the Liberals to stop that.
follow the conflict of interest law, but the Prime Minister refuses to swear him in as a public servant. So, if there is no conflict of interest, why won't carbon tax Carney do a full job as a public servant that can be scrutinized by our Ethics Commission rather than fleecing Canadians?
Look at this, Mr. Speaker. He's really cheesed that we didn't hire him on for the government payroll. That Mark Carney has chosen to step up to fight with the Liberal Party against the reckless and dangerous economic plans of the Conservative Party should be an example to all Canadians. People across the country are beginning to see how ridiculous and dangerous the ideas that the Leader of the Opposition are putting forward and are stepping up to roll up their sleeves and fight back against that brokenest, austere vision of not helping Canadians, of hurting Canadians, of going back to a time where Canadians didn't have the bright future.
Yeah, because it's such a bright future right now. Something to note about him just speaking there after he mentioned carbon tax Carney and Trudeau actually let the words out of his mouth, Mark Carney. His rate of speech increased dramatically. Pierre Poilievre is hitting the sore spot. There's something there that we're not supposed to know about between Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau. It's quite obvious what it is. While he's on the payroll, he's not being scrutinized by the Ethics Commission. Clearly there's something there because Trudeau just picked up the pace there real quick. Trudeau looked nervous. He's very hasty with that response. They're definitely hiding something. There they are again, standing again. So I guess they saved the best for last there. The Mark Carney situation is very interesting because Trudeau really got up to defend him there. And he actually looked like he was nervous and he had to really fight back and try to put on the show. It's funny, he keeps pointing at Pierre Poilievre as the one acting when we have the actor who's been acting the entire time. It's really time for everyone to start digging into Mark Carney. If you have any clips or any information, any sort of smoking guns, just anything leading to anything of Mark Carney, post it in my FB group. We'll start compiling information about this guy. I have a feeling sooner than later, though, the guy's going to get exposed.